Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 8th Select Board meeting. Before we begin our Pledge of Allegiance, if we could just take a moment of silence to recognize our 39th President, Mr. Jimmy Carter. Okay, thank you, and if you please...
We are being recorded.
And we are being recorded. If you could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so please accept our apologies for being a couple minutes late. We were in executive session. And so we're going to start our meeting with public comment. If there's anyone here that has a public comment, please step up to the mic and state your name and address. Or if there's anybody online.
Nobody online.
Okay, nobody online, so we will move to the Town Administrator's report. Mr. Cresta.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. I am pleased to be able to offer the following report on programs and initiatives that are ongoing in the town of Swampscott, as well as some updates on a variety of things that have happened since my last report. Kings Beach, the Water and Sewer Infrastructure Advisory Committee, we're coincidentally meeting tonight at the same time, voted to support a $15,000 investment to the City of Lynn to secure a 3-month rental of a portable UV treatment system. However, the committee is aware that this vote was only a recommendation and that the Select Board would have to approve the issuance of the funds. I've had several conversations with the Lynn Mayor and his staff. Most recently, last Friday, Mayor Nicholson is looking for Swampscott's financial support for the UV pilot program to treat the 2 outfalls at Kings Beach. Preliminary estimates that the 3-month pilot program, which would run from June through August, would cost $500,000, which we would be responsible for half if we agree to do so. Kleinfelder, who is currently working for Lynn, not Swampscott at this time, is firming up that number. And before I can reach that subject with you guys, I'll have to have a firm number. They're very well aware of that. So I'd like to add that to a future agenda. That's okay. The Glover, an access and indemnification agreement was signed by the Athenas family in the town over the weekend. This will allow Structures North, New England Landmark, distinctly New England properties and real estate, the town of Swampscott, and Emery Construction to access the property. Monday, Structures North was on the inside the building. We were delayed. Tuesday, Public Works was supposed to be there. We ended up getting in there today. The trees are down. Spoke with Emery Construction. They will be on site tomorrow to top the building. Hopefully we'll finish tomorrow. Maybe not. They'll finish up on Friday. All right, finance. I'll use the Amy's here. ARPA funds were reallocated earlier this week to take overages in projects that we either don't have signed contracts for or contracts that came in at less than they were originally funded through ARPA. $120,000 was reallocated to the Pine Street acquisition, and the remainder of the $23,000 to the sewer infrastructure repairs, with a concentration on Kings and Fishing Beach. Senior Center hosted a fabulous winter festival this year to celebrate as well as educate and share traditions around Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, and the winter solstice. The Friends were extremely supportive of this event and covered all the costs. It was real nice. Moving on, Human Resources. HR is very busy completing their reorganization of files so they are easy to access. Human Resources is making final edits to a potential new employee handbook, which we'll talk about in a second. And lastly, they are making salary comparisons for town employees. Facilities is busy having new water filling stations installed around town. Most recently, the Town Hall. Police Department, I met with Detective Doyle and Detective Chandler earlier to discuss the reopening of the unsolved murder of Henry Bedard that took place here in Swampscott 50 years ago. 50 years ago. It's hard to believe I was a young boy at that time of the murder and recall the impact it had on the community. Personally, I'd love to see that murder resolved and finally bring closure to the Bedard family. Public Works, I received the invoice from Grenice & Son for the sewer force main repair on Nahan Street in Lynn, $98,000+. Right now, the unforeseen bill is being paid through ARPA funds. All right, I attended a Marshall Street outfall progress meeting, construction on the Marshall Street project. Bernice has been busy repairing sewer mains on Fuller Ave, Cedar Hill Terrace, and Aspen Road, and most recently today they're on Millet Road. I attended a Phase 2A bidding and construction project meeting for the Stacy's Brook sewer infrastructure improvements. An invitation for bid was sent out on January 2nd, with the back due on January 30th. The estimated cost of that project, including the base bid and alternate, $2.7 million. All right, continue. Get a little bit more that wasn't in the packet.
Oh, bonus.
Making up for all the lost time that I've been skipped over the last few meetings. All right, so we've had some meetings with Town Hall, currently working with staff to be more efficient and resident-friendly for 2025. We plan on adding 4 hours of operation to the Town Hall for the residents of Swampscott. This will be accomplished without adding additional hours to Town Hall employees. Starting in February, all department heads will return to working on Fridays from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. All department heads will now work Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., so they're still going to be working 36 hours. It's just giving the town an additional 4 hours of coverage without really impacting the budget. Support staff will keep their current hours, which are right now 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Customer service will have one staff member will work the new hours, and the other staff member will work the new hours that we're proposing. Met with a lot of staff, and not surprising, well, I should say surprising, very receptive. You know, they're excited to be able to leave an hour earlier on Monday, Tuesday, 3 hours earlier on Wednesday and Friday, and work the 4 hours on Friday. So, it's looking good. I think it's a good idea. I'm usually there anyways. And while
You know, that was like kind of half people work one schedule and half a different.
Yeah, the department heads are going to work the 8 to 4, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and Wednesday, excuse me, and then Friday they'll work 8 to 12. Support staff, which is non-department heads, will work current schedule of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, 8 to 5, Wednesday, 8 to 7. So, keeps the town hall open longer without really impacting the budget, bottom line. Mary Ann McMaster and I are currently meeting one-on-one with department heads and rolling out some 2025 expectations. All meetings will be completed by the end of next week. Each department head will be responsible for reporting weekly via email a report of what their department accomplished in the previous week, what their department goals are for the current week, and any problems/solutions that they have encountered. This information will be used for future TA reports. We've also worked with my team to create a tracking sheet for flex/comp time to properly track comp time. As I said, I'm not implying that compensatory time has been abused over the years, but I do know that it wasn't properly being tracked. Mary Ann created a form. The new form must be completed by employees prior to the comp time. I'll approve it, and then they'll be able to bank that time, or they can use flex time. What I've worked out with department heads is each one of our contracts says we're expected to work a reasonable amount of overtime, so we've all agreed that 2 hours is a reasonable amount of work overtime. So if a department has a meeting and they're there for 2 hours, it's basically on them. Anything over, they're entitled to comp time or flex time. comp time, meaning they can bank it to take a day off in the future. Flex time is if it's a late meeting, and they want to come in an hour late. If it was an hour, they can come in late the next day. Once again, it's been pretty receptive with the employees. We're also looking to have a new employee handbook published soon. It is currently being edited one last time, and one then will go out to town council before it is published. This handbook will cover many personnel policies that may not have been previously covered. We do not have an employee handbook, just a personnel policy that was last updated in 2022. All right? And then I just want to add, that these changes are in no way meant to criticize any former TAs or people that were in charge before. I would consider these changes nothing more than a difference in management style. So I'm happy that they've been received very well. All right. Then one final part of my report is I've asked the chair, Ms. Fletcher, to please add to the next agenda a discussion and possible vote on a financial transition audit. This type of audit is not an annual audit of the books and records, nor is it a forensic audit. Transition audit is traditionally done by an independent CPA firm by conducting certain tests or reviews or either the finances of the organization or organizational review. During that conversation, the board can discuss and determine whether there are any financial risks for the incoming town administrator. The review would need to be an independent in nature by hiring an outside firm, and the results of the audit would be public document. So we're hoping to have that on the next agenda, if you're so pleased.
We'll tell Diane.
All right. Get that, Diane?
We'll ask Diane.
I'll have to look at the transcripts, because somebody just texted me and said that the Teams wasn't working right at the beginning of the meeting.
Yep.
And asked if we could do public comment.
Yes, right after the,
Anybody online?
right after the TA report, we'll do public
Thank you.
comment
That's it.
again. Does anybody have any, David?
Yep. Yeah, Gino, a few things. So you mentioned in the Public Works, sewer force main repair on the Hot Street
Yes,
for $98,373, and you said you used ARPA funds.
that's right, yep.
How does that, didn't we vote ARPA funds at our last meeting? How does that work?
So I think it was shifted some of the money around. It was the $2.5 million Kings Beach ARPA funds. It wasn't the 4.5 ton ARPA funds.
You can use the 4.5 ARPA funds, because at our last meeting, the language is water and sewer infrastructure.
Right, but
Isn't
my
it one of
concern
the-
was that was already accounted for most of it, wasn't it?
I'm not really sure, I just know that you have a pretty wide window, because you're gonna have more than just 1.8 over at Fisherman's, you're gonna have to go into
The other
the loans, so either way, water and sewer
So-
should still be able to.
So once these ARPA funds are gone, how do we pay for something breaking in the future in 25 or,
Sewer
Once the-
enterprise fund.
and there are sufficient funds? in
Right
there?
now, there's not. We all know that. But going forward, there will be. By the time we exhaust the ARPA funds, I'm very confident that we're gonna have funds in that account. Fortunately, the rates are gonna skyrocket this year. Sewer.
Skyrocket how? How much?
We haven't done anything yet. We just know that there's a negative balance right now, and we're gonna have to account for that, plus paying off the loans for,
Well, I think you have to look into everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that we have a real drop-dead number on
Oh,
that,
no,
right?
definitely
Yeah,
not.
so it's got to do a little bit of research there.
Okay, so we have a deficit in the sewer?
No, I don't know that for a fact. I'm hearing there's a possibility of a deficit. I don't know. I mean, I'm hearing from one individual that there's a deficit, and I'm hearing from another individual that there's not a deficit. So one of the reasons we're asking for a transition audit will help make these really clear.
Okay, and then.
Wait, Amy,
We have a,
Amy, you go ahead and comment.
Hi. So we do not currently have a deficit. We are projected to if we continue on the trend that we are for the upcoming and future year. So we are going to have to propose a rate increase. We're currently working on drafting that recommendation right now. And part of the transition audit will also look at the user charges and rates that we have and make recommendations to see if the way that we're doing them is, sufficient, or if they recommend as an independent third party if those rates should be increased more than what we've been doing.
I can help you on that.
Okay. All right, thank you, Amy. And I just had another question, just about the Kings Beach, about the UV pilot program.
Yes.
Just where, would this be located in Swampscott or located in Lynn?
The pilot would be located in Swampscott.
Okay?
Yep.
And would the pilot measure, you know, would it be for beach season, or would it, do we have an idea of timing, Gino?
Yes, so if we go through with the pilot, it's gonna be from June 1st through the end of August.
Okay, so beach season,
Beach season, exactly.
okay. Okay,
Right.
'cause I had heard rumors that it was going to be at a different time.
That would
I
make
just,
no
it wouldn't make
yeah.
sense. Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a couple questions to follow up on that. So when would we need to, what's the 15K? The 15K is for the 3-month rental.
Right, well, it's the deposit on the 3-month rental.
It's the deposit. Okay, that's okay. All right, that's okay. So when would we need to vote on that, roughly?
In the next month or so. So Lynn has put down the $30,000 deposit with the understanding that we may
Gotcha.
support half it,
Gotcha.
with no promises.
Correct. So the issue here is, and I had reported back on, I reported on this about 6 weeks ago, when Mayor Nicholson is requesting that we participate, but he made it very clear to the mayor that we will not be participating without all of the information presented to us. As of today, we still don't have all of the information. So we're waiting on that. You know, I am concerned that the water and sewer is supporting 15K without even knowing what all the information is looking like.
Well, they do. I was at the meeting when they voted on it. They do have most of the information. The only thing they really don't know is the final cost. You know, the 500,000, is it 500,000, is it 600,000? But Kleinfeld is confident it's in the ballpark.
Okay,
So they have, okay.
go ahead.
I'm probably going to go the same place you are.
So let's just say, are we going to even go one step further? Let's just say we put in a pilot.
Yep.
Put in a pilot, the pilot looks like it's successful. We still have to have a serious conversation of where this machinery is going to go, and that's a very serious issue here in Swampscott, which the mayor and the state representative have been made aware of. So
I agree.
is that conversation being had at the water and sewer infrastructure meetings?
Not necessarily, but I have forwarded that information to Mayor Nicholson directly.
Okay,
We're going to probably have it, I don't want to speak for anybody, that may be an issue with where they desire to put that right now. The location right now, they're thinking about putting a permanent facility. Kleinfelder's recommendation was 3 New Ocean, and that's a small lot. Yeah, they can squeeze it in there, but we need to discuss that, whether we want to put that in Swampscott. Or is there another location?
okay. Doug?
I guess, so I'm not even super clear about even the super preliminary results. You know, I think Liz came in here and did a brief oral. But that, we would have that type of little mini package before we have to vote on the 15, because the 15 is really kind of voting on the 500, right?
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Yep.
So we're going to just need some type of an ETA. I mean,
Yep. So we meet every Friday. Anybody wants to be part of that meeting?
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
Do you feel that the city of Lynn is so confident in making the pilot happen that if we chose not to participate, they would figure out a way to still do it?
Potentially.
Is that funny?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, they know they're going forward right now without a firm commitment from the town of Swampscott.
Okay. What,
Are there funds that are, you know, I know there's been consultants and kind of oral agreements back and forth between town of Swampscott, city of Lynn. Are there funds that are owed to Swampscott from the city of Lynn and vice versa? Are those documented and memorialized?
They are,
They are?
yep.
Okay.
So there's two sets of expenditures. One, they've agreed half, and the other one, we're still gonna have to work on a little bit.
So I think the problem is, let's be real clear.
Yep,
The problem is, the town administrator had made an offer to Lynn that we would do the entire, what do you call that? What do you want to call that study? The
Study,
The
yes.
study,
committee
the steering committee study to the tune of, I think it was 183 or 187,
187.
okay? And according to Lynn, our town administrator committed to paying the whole thing. According, in a conversation I've had with our town administrator, that they were going to be paying for half of it, that there was a conversation. So now Gino's in the situation of having to work this out and find something agreeable between both parties. The one concern that I have is that that study was paid for out of the enterprise fund, and that needs to be looked into.
Paid out of the,
Wasn't that paid out of the
ARPA.
2.5
ARPA.
ARPA?
No, it was paid out of the enterprise fund.
Can we, next time, or send around, or whatever, just a summary of that?
please, yes.
Because even like a little bit like this 98,000 too, I don't think we
Send you
were,
copies of the invoices.
no,
They
I
were-
don't mean that. I just mean, like, I don't remember being aware that we were going to use ARPA for this $98,000. And so I believe that it should come back through here if we're going to make kind of major adjustments in the way that we're spending the 2.5. Okay?
Yeah,
So it'd be good to have an update about what we're now seeing for that 2.5. It all makes sense in the context, if we're going to have to do another 250,000 for the UV, right? That all kind of fits together.
I have a question on, following up on the, do you know where we are with the SRF loans?
Yes, actually Liz made the phone call. We should have an answer within the next couple of weeks. We've applied for it,
Right,
and they're reviewing them as we speak, the
Right.
state, and we should have an answer within 2 weeks.
and can we also get on the calendar how the SRF loans, what the application dates are for not just this one, but for the
Future,
future ones?
Yep.
So that we can keep rolling that in. And my other question is, on the construction with Grenice on the Fuller Ave, Cedar Hill Terrace, and Aspen Road, once that's worked on, how do we turn around and test to see if that's made a difference in anything? What's the procedure there?
so once they finish all the work as part of the 1.7, we're gonna test the outfall and see if their results have improved. And my guess is, the answer is that they're gonna be improved, but are they gonna get to that 104 number? We'll find out. They have to improve because we found broken pipes all over the area. And that-
What, do we test incrementally, like during different, at different manhole covers? I mean,
Oh, yeah,
okay.
Yep.
Got it.
the big one is the manhole cover right behind 400 Humphrey Street. It's getting a high hit.
Okay. And then my last request is, can you just work on what are we doing as far as rodent control, especially off of Blaney? What is the Board of Health actually doing? What are the actions that are going in there?
Okay.
Okay. Now, because we had a technical issue, we're just going to go back to resident comment for a second, if people would mind. So, M?
Hi, you can speak. You can unmute yourself. M?
That's Mike McClung.
Oh, Mike, you You can talk.
Okay, well, we can come back later. Let's now move to our joint meeting with the Housing Authority. If the Housing Authority wants to open your meeting.
I can say, yeah, that's all right. Thank you. Who needs mine?
Hi, my name is Charles Patsios. I'm the chair of the Swampscott Housing Authority and also the governor's appointee to the Housing
Mr.
Authority.
Mr. Patsios, could you call your meeting to order and then have a vote of your board to open up your meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry. You said that night. So I'd like to entertain a motion to open the meeting. I'll call the order of the meeting.
Do I have to push this? Testing, can you hear me? Okay. I move that we open the meeting of the Housing Authority.
So everyone's very, okay, so the meeting is
You have a
open.
second?
He seconded it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
There you go.
So we're here this evening. Thank you for the invitation. We appreciate the opportunity to meet with the Select Board. Thank you. We received some time ago a resignation of one of the members on the Housing Authority, and it's our responsibility to collectively come up with a recommendation, a nominee, if you will, that we present to the Select Board, and the Select Board then decides if they'd like to confirm that recommendation of the Housing Authority. So we are here this evening to accomplish that. The nominee that we're bringing forth is Deb Nutter, and the opportunity that we have this evening is to have you guys maybe ask some questions or whatever it is that formally you would like to do to confirm our recommendation to the Swampscott Select Board to seat Deb.
So, Ms. Nutter, would you like to come up and say a few words, or?
You could be there.
Oh, you,
Or she
right
can-
there? So you're there?
Comfortable and
I mean,
Hi, I recently retired. I've been in the affordable housing industry for 45 years. My dad and I started working together back in July of 1979. On the private side, we did a lot of development in Maine and Massachusetts, mostly affordable, and then in 1992, he and my mother and I formed a nonprofit called the Caleb Foundation, and the Caleb Foundation now serves over 5,000 residents throughout New England, from Bangor out to North Adams, down to Waterbury, Connecticut. And so I don't know public housing, obviously, as well, because I've been on the private side, but I'm looking forward to a crash course and ready to help in any way I can.
sounds like we're really lucky to have you. So, does anybody have any questions, Ms. Nutter?
I just have a few comments. Deb, I think we're incredibly lucky to have you, share your knowledge and your expertise around housing with the Swampscott Housing Authority. I think it's certainly something that, we've had discussions for probably the last year about moving forward with a feasibility study to potentially redevelop. So I think that your skill set, really will fit in well with those initiatives, and I'm incredibly supportive of your addition to the Swampscott Housing Authority, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm also at the senior center, thanks to my sister, once a week, helping people with housing questions.
Oh, good. All right, does anybody have any other questions for Ms. Nutter or the Housing Authority? Okay, so can I have a motion to accept Debbie Nutter as the next member of the Housing Authority?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Ms.
Aye.
Zucker?
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
And I'll entertain a motion to close the meeting.
Sure, I make a motion to close the Housing
Do
Authority
you
meeting.
have to make a motion to accept Ms. Nutter?
We did that. We had
We
done
already
that
did
previously.
previously, yeah.
Okay.
So I make a motion to close our meeting.
Do we have a second? Anybody? Very beautiful. All those in favor? Aye, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike McClung is still hanging on.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to try resident comment one more time. Mr. McClung?
He should be all set.
Okay.
Diane, is he allowed to unmute?
He can, as far as I know, he should just be able to unmute himself. I have him unmuted. Amy, can you help? Sorry, Mike.
Keeps putting his hand up and down. That part we can see.
Mike, you should be able to.
Oh, I can see it.
Thank you,
Oh,
Perfect.
thank you. Appreciate Joe and team getting the technical difficulty sorted. I'm sure it was just an innocent issue. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, residents, town staff, my name is Michael McClung, 64 Polar Ave. Tonight I am appearing in my official capacity as town moderator. First, I would like to underscore Gino's comments. The trauma of learning of Henry Bernard's murder as a middle schooler was definitely something that I think we'd all like to put behind us. But tonight, I'd like to share some concerns I've been hearing from several town meeting members about the select board. First of all, the public's heard absolutely nothing from this board about the citizens petition filed in early December with over 200 signatures verified by the town clerk. In hopes of avoiding a special town meeting's last minute and disorganized as the one we just held, I'd hope for some sort of discussion by this board regarding setting a date. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 10, a special town meeting should already have been held to hear this petition. Instead, there's been zero discussion by this board, not even a public acknowledgement of the receipt of the petition. We can only assume you've taken the unprecedented decision to ignore it entirely. This remedy of petition to town meeting is one of the most important safeguards of our democracy, predating even the Declaration of Independence. I am not sure what is gained by turning a deaf ear to more than 200 of your constituents. Moreover, I believe it runs the risk of perpetuating a pattern of disrespect by this board toward our town bodies, town meeting most particularly. Secondly, several town meeting members have inquired about the sudden departure of the town administrator. According to the Lynn item article, December 3rd, the town administrator resigned more than a month ago, yet to date residents have heard nothing from the select board, not even an acknowledgement that he actually departed. The day that news broke, I sent an official email to the select board, finance committee, and school committee regarding the next steps required under our town charter to select a new town administrator. Specifically, the creation of a selection committee under which you, the finance committee, and the school committee each have an appointee. I've heard back from the other two bodies, but I've heard nothing from you. It's also concerning that the select board has waited until tonight to post an agenda item for discussion and possible vote on an interim administrator. Shouldn't that discussion and appointment have occurred in the hours following the town administrator's departure? Not a month later? Who has officially been running the town since then? In short, I am not sure what is driving the select board's complete lack of communication and transparency with town meeting, town officials, and the public. But your credibility, our credibility, is suffering as a result. I thank you for taking these remarks in the spirit of constructive criticism toward our shared goals. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Moderator Michael McClung. Next on the agenda,
So wait, so why aren't we talking about the citizens petition?
we can talk about, we're at resident comment. I'm not
I
going to
mean,
be
we have-
addressing. The citizens petition is actually on the next agenda, is already on the next agenda.
I mean, we have 200 certified signatures, opinions matter. We want to hear everyone's opinion, but you know, we're
Okay,
gonna,
this is
we're gonna disregard the opinions of 200 residents as it pertains to this matter.
This is not on the agenda, so we're not in a position where we can talk about
I
it.
mean, right now, we have a select board that's gone against the wishes of town meeting, it's gone against the
Okay.
actual
Mr.
RFP.
Grishman,
Gone
Mr.
against the
Grishman,
RFP
are you reading
process,
another- there we
gone
go.
against the veterans.
Mr. Grishman,
and gone
I
against
have to
the
ask you to
VFW
stop.
leadership, and now we're
Mr.
going against
Grishman,
Mass General
Mr.
law.
Grishman. Thank you, Mr. Grishman. Next on our agenda is the planning board proposed bylaw changes. Thank you, Mr. Dooley.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having me here tonight. I wanted to have this meeting with you all in an effort to, as the planning board gets ready for our annual town meeting this spring, to update this board as to the initiatives that we're hoping to prioritize over the next 4 months to bring to town meeting to adjust our zoning bylaws. The thought process is we want to make sure that this board is comfortable with the initiatives that we've outlined as being a priority for us, so that the next few months we can spend diligently working on bylaws that we'll be confident will make the town meeting warrant in May. Diane, I believe I sent you a PowerPoint today. Yep. Oh, thank you. There we go. You can advance to the next slide. So tonight I'll go through some of the priorities that our board has discussed for this annual town meeting in May, and also 2 longer-term priorities that we think deserve a little bit more runway that we'd like to pursue for an annual town meeting in 2026 as well. So my hope here tonight, as I mentioned, is to update you on what we're looking at now and the initiatives we'd be looking to pursue next year, so we can have some of your buy-in and then begin some of the community engagement process for what I believe are going to be some lengthy conversations with the town. Next slide, please. So the first zoning bylaw update that we're looking to make is to the floodplain and wetland protections and coastal flood overlay districts. The background on this is the Federal Emergency Management Agency is expected to update their flood insurance rate maps in 2025. As a result of those updates, since we participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, we also will have to update our zoning bylaws and our flood maps to match the ones issued by FEMA. So the State Department of Conservation and Recreation works with municipalities across the state to draft bylaws to make us in compliance with the FEMA flood map. So I know Marzi and Marissa from Community Development Office have already been working with DCR to look at the draft bylaws that they have. And in essence, the only efforts we have here are to ensure that our local bylaw and flood maps are in compliance with the state and federal maps. Some additional efforts we hope to undertake as part of this is also to work to ensure the language that we have in these 2 zoning bylaw provisions are consistent among the 2 bylaws and consistent with the language used in the state and federal maps and state and federal flood insurance programs. Some of the language we use is not consistent with some of the federal language, so we've had conversations already with the Conservation Commission to ensure that they're bought in on this process and they're involved so that all of our efforts can be working towards a shared goal. Is there any questions on this before I advance to the next bylaw?
Yes.
Hey, Ted. Is there something about how even the flood insurance rate maps and flood insurance study are kind of like a floor in terms of what we have to do in terms of our coastal flood overlay district? Do we have authority to go, I may be getting this wrong, is that like a very conservative version that comes out of that? Compared to like what?
So the maps, from my understanding, are what the National Flood Insurance Program covers. So, for anybody, so the image on the right obviously shows the 2014 maps that the town has adopted, and it kind of cuts off the Marblehead side, but it goes further up in the Blodgett Ave area as well. So the updates that we'd be doing here will just to be ensuring that the maps that we're using, for the most part, the updates are just to ensure the maps that we're using are matching the federal maps. In terms of some of the additional other zoning restrictions that we have for construction in a flood zone, those, I believe we enacted a few years ago at town meeting. We're not changing any of the updates that were made at, I believe it was 2021 town meeting.
I want to say yes.
Yeah, so we're not going to make any adjustments to the, the elevation levels that we require construction to be had in those areas. It's just strictly language consistency to ensure we're in compliance with the state and federal language, and then the maps to ensure the maps are in line. All of the other protections and provisions of the zoning in those areas we're not touching. Those are relatively recent as of the last few years.
Generally speaking, Doug, when it comes to local zoning regulations versus those that are imposed by the state, if a municipality wants to further restrict what the state already protects, there are circumstances under which we can do so, but not unreasonably regulate it. So, if we wanted to put something forward, it would have to get further approved by the Attorney General, as does all of our zoning changes to the bylaw post-town meeting. But again, it can't be unreasonable. Most of the standards for the flood overlay zones are based on the state building code as well. And then there are, separate to the zoning bylaws, there are going to be stricter standards as far as the Conservation Commission is concerned with how they deal with construction in floodplain areas. They call it land subject to coastal storm flowage. DEP really didn't have any standards for construction in those areas, and they will be coming out with additional standards, or with brand new standards that didn't exist prior. So conservation might have a greater enforcement authority or regulatory authority in construction floodplain versus planning or zoning. So.
And we don't know exactly what these maps are yet, is that correct?
They haven't been released yet, no.
So is it theoretically possible that they would force us to change what our zoning is because of the flooding?
The districts will change. I don't think we're going to be less prone to flooding in 2025. So the districts will change. What our zoning requires in those districts will not change. For example, in the coastal floods area overlay zones, if I were to build a new construction home, utilities, for example, have to be elevated above the average base flood elevation. Exactly. So that requirement would be consistent in the proposed, or would be consistent next year. Just the size and the area of the overlay zone would change to match the flood maps.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
A couple things. Thank you, Ted.
Yep.
So how much so one question is, how much has the map actually changed since the last revision? I'm just interested. We don't need that tonight, but
yeah,
I would be interested to compare and contrast. And then, other than that, like in our packet, what's being presented here on page 41, 42? Is this the as-is?
Yes. Everything you have in your packets is the as-is language for the provision for the parts of the zoning bylaws that we are going to be revisiting. We're too early in the process to have anything more than a concept of here's what we're looking to look at. There's no language that I have to present to you yet. That's what the next few months would be proposed to be doing.
Excellent. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that this was the existing, and then we'll see
All
a
good.
red line.
Yep, and that's consistent for the next few provisions that I'll go through tonight.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yep.
Then one last little question. Will we know the FEMA new maps before town meeting?
That is our hope.
Yeah.
Okay.
We wouldn't be able to update these until the new maps are out, but we're planning on the new maps being released. I think they said sometime in February is what they were projecting, but we're relying on guidance from DCR for most of this, and they work with most of the towns across the Commonwealth who are subject to wetlands and coastal flood. If there's no other questions on this, I will move on to next exciting zoning bylaw update. Accessory dwelling units. As most of you know, Swampscott adopted an accessory dwelling unit bylaw at Springtown meeting in 2023, section 5.12.0.0. However, in August of this past year, Governor Healy signed into law the Affordable Homes Act, and part of the Affordable Homes Act amended the statewide zoning acts to allow accessory dwelling units up to 900 square feet to be built by right in any district that is zoned single family. So what we are proposing to do here is to amend our local accessory dwelling unit bylaw to be in complete compliance with what the statewide regulations are with this new law, which goes into effect on February 8th. To be clear, the state law will supersede what our zoning says regardless of what we do. However, we want to make sure that our bylaw locally matches the state bylaw so that we're in unison and there's no potential for any confusion between state law and our zoning bylaw. To the right, you can see examples of ADUs. And on the next page, highlight some differences between what our existing local bylaw allows and what the new state regulations might change. So our current bylaw only allows one accessory dwelling unit per lot. The new regulations can allow for more than that as long as they're approved by special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we'll be making that change. Our current bylaw allows or restricts ADUs to require the owner occupy either the accessory unit or the primary dwelling on the property. This new statewide regulations prohibit us doing that, so we'll be striking that provision. One off-street parking spot requirement will remain for any ADU that is not within half a mile of the transit station, so that's the MBTA commuter rail. And regulations are still coming out in the next few weeks to say whether that also means bus stations. But again, we'd be in compliance with that as well. Bus stops, excuse me. And then no reduction in pervious areas, what our current bylaw requires. And we cannot impose any design standards on an ADU that are not also imposed on a single-family home. So we would be matching, again, the state requirements there. And same for removal of trees or any shrubbery. We would be matching the state law, which would be ensuring an ADU has essentially the same requirements as a single-family home in terms of design standards. The one other piece of this that is not listed here is municipalities are allowed some small control over ADUs in terms of restricting short-term rentals in the accessory unit. That is something that the planning board, at least in our preliminary conversations, is in favor of restricting to ensure that ADUs are meant for, at least in Swampscott, meant for what the goal of the legislation that the governor signed was, which was to provide more housing opportunities and aging in place and for other needs. So that's something that we, at least in our preliminary conversations, would like to have in this bylaw, is exerting that local control to prohibit short-term rentals of the accessory dwelling units. Before I move on, is there any questions on the ADU section?
Oh, David.
Yep. Yeah, Ted, can you just kind of walk us through the state change, which may allow more than one ADU per lot through special permit? Like, in what scenario would that
So
occur?
if you owned so there's several occurrences where that could happen. Let's say you owned a home with a 1,200-foot carriage house that you're using right now as an accessory dwelling unit that's pre-existing non-conforming, quote unquote. That accessory dwelling unit is always going to be pre-existing non-conforming since this law is just going into effect in February. You could build a 900 square foot, or 899 square foot ADU in your backyard by right, as long as it met all of the regulations in our current zoning bylaws from a dimensional perspective. If you wanted to build 2 accessory dwelling units, you could get a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals to have 2 900 square foot ADUs on one residential property. So you could have one in your basement, you could build a freestanding one, for example, as long as you got a special permit from the zoning board to do so. Additionally, no, that's it, right?
That would be
Yeah.
pretty much it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
So-
in case you want your parents and your in-laws to live with you guys on your property all together.
You'd be a saint
bless.
if you wanted that. So yeah, somebody technically could have 2 ADUs on a property, but any additional one beyond the first is subject to a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
Any other questions on ADUs?
Sounds like good progress.
Yes. And glad Swampscott was ahead of the curve on that one, so.
And I'm glad Swampscott's being
Site
urged
plan
to go a
special
little
permit?
further. Yes.
Yes. Next is site plan special permits. So our current zoning bylaws grant the planning board authority to issue a site plan special permit under section 5.4.0.0, which is required for many development and redevelopment projects in town. Essentially what it does is if you're building an addition of greater than 800 square feet onto your home, or you are tearing down a structure, buying an empty lot, and building a house in excess of 3,000 square feet, you have to come before the planning board and get a site plan special permit in addition to any other permit you might need to get or relief you might need to get from the zoning board. That's how it's currently written. And what the planning board is looking to do is to amend the triggers that require someone to get a site plan special permit. So we have not come down on what size and what the square footage number is going to be, but we've discussed anything from reducing the square footage for new construction in half to eliminating it entirely, to ensure that there is a more equitable opportunity for public participation in some of the design reviews that go through some of these processes. As you can imagine, someone being able to build an 800 square foot addition on their house, 801 square foot addition on their house and needing a site plan special permit, but somebody down the street who's building a 2,999 square foot house and they don't need a special permit creates the appearance of something that might not make sense. So this is designed entirely to create some equity and to give the community and neighbors a greater sense of participation in some of the projects that are going on in town. With that being said, new construction in Swampscott is not something for single-family homes, it's not something we see a lot. 2 projects a year, maybe 3 projects a year for single or 2-family new construction. And this would only apply to residential. So any commercial structures, et cetera, we wouldn't make any changes to those. Those predominantly come before us no matter what happens for a site plan special permit. So it'd strictly look at really the single-family residential, single and 2-family residential.
Can I just ask in 2024, approximately how many site plan special permits you guys reviewed?
233 Puritan, 40 Eastman Ave.
Essex Street, was that beginning of?
I believe that was 2023. It might have spilled into the beginning of 2024.
I think it did. I think it was January 3,
And
5
Boynton
maybe?
Street,
Okay.
right?
Boynton Street was 2023.
That was 2023. Okay,
Yeah.
so at least 3, I would say.
Some years we have a lot, but
Yeah.
my first few years on the planning board, I think I looked at site plan special permits every month,
Yeah.
nonstop. Other years, we don't have quite as many. Or we have really big projects that take up a lot of time and need site plan special permits and 19,000 other pieces of relief for permits. But predominantly, it's a handful a year that we get.
And of those 3 that we just mentioned, only one of them was single-family residential construction. That was 233 Puritan. The other 2 were 8-unit
Right.
multifamily developments.
Okay.
So those, at any rate, would come before the planning board. But
And we had the Prospect Ave ADU, 900 square foot ADU.
Right,
So,
yep, that was an addition.
so
site
4
plan.
or so this past year.
Did you mention Essex?
Essex,
Yeah.
29?
Oh, you did?
Yep.
Yeah, yep.
Yep.
So not a ton, but enough to allow for some greater oversight. Before I move on to the next item, are there any other questions on site plan special permit amendments? All right. So the next 2 are zoning bylaw provisions that we look to engage on now for review at annual town meeting in 2026. The first one is a short-term rental bylaw. Many towns in the Commonwealth have bylaws, either through their general bylaws or their zoning bylaws, that offer a regulatory framework for short-term rentals. This is something Swampscott's planning board has looked at on and off ever since I've been a member for 4 years now, with varying levels of interest and a whole lot of research that has gone into it, not only from Marissa, from your, ever since you joined, to Molly O'Connor when she was our town planner, and I believe Pete did some as well when he was here working. We feel that given some of the attention Swampscott is getting, short-term rentals are not going to decrease in this town. and they're likely to only increase in years to come. So we would like to provide a little bit more of a framework for how those are regulated here in town. There's a difference in process in many towns for how these are regulated. Salem, for example, regulates their short-term rentals through their zoning bylaws. Other towns pursue it through general bylaws. Parts, in some towns, pursue it through both. We feel as though the zoning bylaws is an appropriate way to regulate short-term rentals, and that allow us triggers to, for example, have the building commissioner in his office regulate licenses and give inspections to ensure they are constructed and they are being operated in a safe and in a way that's compliant and continually compliant with Mass State Building Code. And it also allows us to, should the board want to and should town meeting approve, create districts that allow for short-term rentals and districts that prohibit short-term rentals. Our board does not have any predisposed ideas of how we would want to regulate this yet. We're still in the research and investigation phase and conversation phase. But we do feel this is something that the town needs to be in the driver's seat on regulating and to ensure that we have a process so that if there are neighbor complaints, if there are any complaints, that we have a way to regulate these and ensure fairness, not only to the property owners who are looking to exercise their property rights, but also to the neighbors and the community at large. So I'm here to suggest that our board start looking into this, and I believe this is going to require a significant amount of community engagement. I think a lot of us have used Airbnbs before. I know my family uses Airbnbs in Swampscott when they visit. They're a great thing. We have a lot of folks in town who use this for income, which is a great tool and a great resource for them. So we really want to ensure that we have community engagement on this topic before we dive into drafting language. So that's why this is something that we're hoping to discuss now, so that come spring next year, we have a bylaw that really has some community consensus around it, especially from not only our board, but your board and some of the other land use boards in town. Any thoughts or questions on this?
Yeah, I applaud the public engagement because it seems like we would have both opinions in town. The folks who use it for out-of-town guests or, like my parents are out of town, they come in, they might use an Airbnb, and then so they find a benefit to it, but then also neighbors who have habitual turnover of their neighbors and might find an issue there. But then also residents who have passive income from that. So it will be interesting to see sort of where the majority lands.
Right. And I think at the very least, this is at least supposed to give people an opportunity to find ways to, if there is a property that there is a problem with and their neighbor, they have an avenue to have their voice heard. I had a neighbor who was a short-term renter, who had a short-term rental, and I went to town hall 2 months after I moved in, and there was not much recourse that could be done, and I didn't feel like that was very comforting, to feel like there was no avenue for that. So this is, in my mind, a way to help guide conversation, a way to help guide regulation, but a way to give people input that they can feel if there's a problem, there's a way to be heard, and if it's a good thing, to leave some guardrails for the community in terms of what the expectations are. And if the town requires a license, which many towns do, it's another good little income boost for the town.
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
Do we have an idea of how many short-term rentals we have in town, one, and then two, and I don't know the answer to this, are these short-term rentals taxed as commercial properties? And if not, do we have the ability to tax them as commercial properties? Just spitballing here.
Your first question, how many are in Swampscott? I couldn't venture to guess how many. I know there's at least 2 dozen. I've looked at them all the time. I have family that visits a lot, and they're like, oh, go look at this one, go look at that one. Between VRBO, Airbnb, and all the other apps and programs and everything, there's a fair amount. So I wouldn't want to guess, but I'd say, a couple dozen at least.
Okay.
In terms of the tax rate, that's something way over my pay grade. So that's something I would ask our
There is
town.
rental income.
I would ask our town treasurer or
On
our town
Airbnb.
accountant if they have the ability to reclassify as a commercial property under a commercial tax rate.
And that was the question was the ability to reclass as a commercial property rather than a residential property.
I'm not sure as far as the future, but I just know right now we do bring in income on our Airbnbs, but I don't think they would be classified as commercial. I don't think the classification changes. I think that they just take out a license, and then,
They pay the 6% hotel motel?
I don't know
Yeah,
if that's the exact rate they pay.
the hotel motel tax is equal with Airbnbs and short-term rentals as it is with a hotel motel room. In terms of the property classification, that's, I think, what you're getting at. Can we tax it at the same rate that commercial properties are versus the residential? And that's, yeah, like I said, way over my pay grade.
Fair.
Are you saying,
I'm-
do we
I'm just-
change the
I'm-
entire?
I'm asking.
So we changed the rate on the hotel rate back, I think, I don't know, maybe, I don't know when it was, but we changed the rate, and I do remember that there was a resident who got up, who did have Airbnbs and wanted to just reflect on that. That would have, changing that rate would be a burden, so
Right.
I remember that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on short-term rentals before I move on? And the final 2026 bylaw that I want to raise for conversation is our signage bylaw. Our zoning bylaws currently regulate signs in section 3.2.0.0, and that's anything from residential real estate signs to sandwich boards to commercial signs, and that commercial signs include awnings, lighted displays, window decals, to the barbershop poles, et cetera, et cetera. Our board has looked at and has revised the signage bylaw at least one time since I've been on the board, but it has not ultimately made the town meeting warrant. We've revisited it time and time again, and it's something that our board feels strongly that over the next couple years, it's something that we would like to revisit. And the reason why I'm bringing it up now is because obviously this impacts a lot of our commercial businesses along Humphrey Street and in Vinnon Square. We believe it would require a fair bit of working with the Office of Community Development to work with our local business owners to get feedback on what our current bylaw is, to get buy-in and to get their feedback as we draft a new bylaw in order to have them be participants, and obviously they're members of our community as well, so we want to ensure that they have a voice in this. Our current bylaw does have a number of restrictions that are not followed currently along any of our commercial zones. For example, lighted signs, which I'm sure you can drive down any of our streets and see, are completely prohibited in our zoning bylaws. So we would want to make sure that if we do pursue this, that we can alert business owners what signage they might have currently that is not in compliance with their zoning bylaws, give them an opportunity to review that and look at their own advertising and ensure that they have the ability to communicate with us whether they, as we go through this process, their needs. So we really want to be responsive to the community needs, and that includes some of the commercial business owners in town. But also we do feel strongly that our zoning bylaws should be followed, and that we need to craft one that has community buy-in so we have more compliance in terms of businesses and residential properties adhering to our zoning bylaws in terms of signage. So we'd like to start that process now. I know it's going to take a long time to kind of get that community engagement that we feel is important as we look at these processes and look at these regulations. So that's something we'd look at starting immediately after this town meeting to kind of start the ball rolling on the community engagement front, especially with our business owners.
Any questions? All right, well, thank you, Ted.
That's all I got for you. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa.
Okay, next on our agenda is the retirement board updates. Mr.
If I move to the middle, yeah.
Oh, we appreciate it. We do. We're going to have to make that a requirement.
Bob's not. I'm actually going to jump, as Bob's very accustomed to me doing in our meetings. I'm just going to, if you give me 2 minutes. Comments made about the select board. I just would like to take this opportunity as the chairman of the retirement board to tell you what a difference, and I'm not trying to butter people up, but what a difference we have seen in the last several years from the board. To have a chairperson as a liaison, who I know reports back to at our meetings. We're lucky because I know that she keeps you updated. We've had a bit of an antagonistic relationship, not with the board members, but it is what it is. And to that end, I'd like to actually tell you that hopefully the new acting and I have lunch on Friday to talk about the retirement board, first ever. And you all have my phone number, and we really, really appreciate it. But I also want to give a big shout out to Eric Hartman. I've never seen a chairperson of a finance committee come to our meetings, sit down and go over numbers, explain. He has a lot of input too in terms of, his understanding, which is light years ahead of where we've ever been. So I just want people in Swampscott to know, because we are such a big budget item, that it's been great working with all of you, and I know every one of you has my cell phone number and always will feel free to call me on anything. Now, to the brains of the board. Bob Powell.
The answer's still no.
I think you, Diane, you have the presentation here. Okay.
I hope so, Bob.
All right. So just by way of background, Bob Powell, Chair of the Council on Aging, Co-Chair of the Swampscott for All Ages, a member of the Swampscott Retirement Board, member of the 2035 Master Plan, member of the Community Life Center Task Force.
And has no time.
And I might be blamed for having Town Hall reopen on Friday,
It's your fault.
I walked in on Friday morning at 8 o'clock to bump into Gino, and he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I don't know, really. I thought the place was open." He said, "Well, maybe." My purpose today, I think, is mostly informational. I'm not here to ask for a vote. I'm not asked really to go beyond what I'm going to describe tonight. A little bit of history about the COLA base for the retirees and would-be retirees of Swampscott. In March of 2021, the Retirement Board voted unanimously to increase the COLA base from $13,000 to $14,000, and that would be effective July 1, 2021. And we submitted an article for the May at the town meeting. And prior to that, we had met with the FinCom, and we have asked for a COLA base increase for many years, and had never really got beyond that meeting, and never really had a warrant presented to my recollection.
No, we've increased it twice.
Right, yeah, but the last time before we increased it in March of 2021 was 2012, so almost a decade before we had increased it from the level of, from 12,000 to 13,000. And what we did at the time in 2021 was to meet with the FinCom to come up with metrics by which we would ask for a COLA base increase. And at the time, what we did was we agreed that there would be 3 triggers that would trigger us coming to FinCom and coming to the Select Board, and then going ultimately to town meeting to request a COLA base increase. And those triggers were an improvement in the funded ratio of the retirement fund, a look at how the Swampscott COLA base was performing relative to inflation, and then lastly, what was what the COLA base was relative to other retirement systems, and then what was the purchasing power relative to CPI. So trigger 1, and I'm here now to say that all these triggers have been met, and we will likely be coming to the FinCom and Select Board in the future to ask for a COLA base increase. What that COLA base increase is or will be is yet unknown. What the cost to the town will be is yet unknown. What the impact on the funding schedule will be is yet unknown. So none of that information I have today. We'll have a better sense of that maybe after January when our when Siegel comes back.
Actuarial numbers just aren't there yet.
So they've done a preliminary estimate, but on 2-year-old data. We have that, but it's not worth sharing with anyone at the moment. But come January, we'll have new data. We'll ask them to conduct a new review, and then we'll come before you with the analysis of that. So just by way of background, trigger 1 is the funded ratio. It's increased 31% since 2017, and now is just 5 points away from the state average. So in 2017, it was 53.46%, meaning that we were like really underfunded. 50% of the fund was underfunded, and now we're 75% funded, so 25% away from being fully funded. By the way, our funding schedule calls for us to be fully funded by 2031, and I'll have a better sense of where that new funded ratio is come January. Trigger 2 was, how is the COLA base relative to the state average of the 104 retirement systems in Massachusetts? And we are at 14,000 now. The COLA base for the 104 retirement systems in Massachusetts is now 15,371. So we're 1,371 below the COLA base for that trigger. And then lastly, we looked at retirees who are at the COLA base in FY22 at $14,000 and what they would be at now if they were just getting their 3% COLA increase as we've voted on over the past 3 years. And so someone who was at $14,000 in 2021 and getting a 3% COLA base would be at now at $15,260. But if you look at that same $14,000 and apply CPI to it, they would need $16,100 to maintain the same standard of living that they had back in 2021. So they are behind the curve. So all these 3 triggers have been met. The last thing I'll mention is as 11/30/2024, there are 56 retirees who are at the 14,000 COLA base and below, and then there are 188 retirees who are earning more than 14,000. Of the 56 retirees who are earning 14,000 or less, 2/3 were full-time employees and 1/3 were part-time.
It's also important to note that, and we're going to get stuck on numbers here, that when we say part-time and retirement words, there's a minimum that they have to work, which is 20?
20 or less, yeah.
Yeah, so that part-time, it's not just working a couple hours a week. So we have, within the general laws, chapter 32, and our own bylaws, we set the amount of time they have to work to be able to contribute to the retirement system.
So for me, the next steps would be come January, we'll get our new report from Siegel. We'll make a request to have them evaluate the effect of increasing the COLA base on the funding schedule and the unfunded liability, both at 3% and at 5%. And then we'll present those findings to the Select Board and FinCom, and then hopefully we'll present the warrant in May of 2025. Did I miss anything?
No, there's only one thing that I think the last time you saw us, we were here with the state under General Laws, Chapter 32, the most unusual move by the legislature ever, that you needed to approve an additional 2% one-time COLA increase, so that there's only 10 communities in the state of Massachusetts that voted it down. You were one of 10. So thus, you always have to remember that all of our numbers we're presenting to you, 90% of the boards have included that. Our numbers don't include that because we weren't granted that. So it's not here to say, whatever. I'm just telling you that you always have to remember that we're not working on numbers that include that one-time 2%, and which was based on incredible inflation. Based on the post-COVID, there was a feeling amongst the state, including the State Retirement Board for all the state employees, approved it that, like all people, many people in their jobs received some type of benefit or consideration of what the country was going through in our economy post-COVID. That was the reason for the 2% request. And again, so our numbers, you always have to remember that we're working on numbers that most towns and cities had an extra 2% for a year.
Not all of us voted against that, just FYI.
Hey, they got to live with the board's vote. That's, and that's just here to there, but that is a little caveat to our numbers that we always would like to make sure we have. But I do look forward to having not only the relationship with this board, but again, I reemphasize that, whether it be Gene or whoever you do hire as your town administrator, I would ask it essential that they at least come in and know that we're working closely with us, because it's such a big budget. And I think that for, I won't say hundreds of years, but forever, we're the mystery budget item and we're the mystery board. I mean, we are an independent board, but it's such an unusual situation where you have an independent board so related to the town's budget. And I think dependency on the administration within our town government and open dialogue and working together, in opposing, I mean, clearly it's not always going to be perfect. And the only other shout out I want to give is we really enjoy having Amy Sarro as our fifth member. We traditionally haven't had as much input, and she's very good at letting us know kind of what's going on in the finance of the town, which has been great input. She's done a great job too for us.
Great, so I do have a question. Do you have a timeline that you're going to be working once you have the actuary? Because the actuary will be in within the next 2 weeks, right?
We hope, yeah, I would say, we say January, and if it's the first week of February, and my plan is to get that before us in a meeting, our monthly meeting, or if I need to call a special meeting, do that. And then, I think at that point, on the phone with Eric saying, let's get in, squeeze us in, so we can get the process a little earlier than we would usually.
Okay, because we have an issue with the process right now because we're working on the budgets right now. So I just think that, I do know from being on the finance committee, there are many, many times the retirement board didn't come forward with what their requests were. And I think it was often a timing issue.
Yeah.
So
The only thing I can say is traditionally, and if we're looking at our old numbers, which we said are irrelevant, but we suspect that any COLA increase would probably not affect.
Correct.
So the funding schedule currently is the good funding schedule, probably going into that. There's not going to significant increase to the town's contribution this year. That's what I've always seen in the COLA numbers. I can't guarantee that, but it's usually not a significant increase. So I know that Eric's probably working, I would guess he's working with last year's number and in his head knows what increase that would be because it's on the funding schedule now. So it's not going to be a huge change for this year.
Yeah,
anything that would affect the budget.
And you might recall, Mary Ellen, from that meeting where our actuary came in, was they back-ended the COLA increase. So
Right.
that all those numbers were sort of on target except in the final year.
Right. My concern is just making sure that we have really good communication and that we don't end up getting to the end line and then all of a sudden you guys didn't get a shot in there and we didn't. I just want to make sure that we're
But
in front of
again,
it.
like those numbers really, the number they have on our funding schedule that is good numbers there's no anticipation there'd be any change of what would already be due from the town, which they have that funding schedule, and that's the number that they're working on.
And last year you did a pretty lengthy, I don't know, you want to call it a clinic or a seminar
Yeah.
on retirement. And I asked Nancy to send that link out to all the select board members. Did you folks get that? I'll double check where that link is.
I'll make
but-
sure tomorrow.
So you'll.
She's watching, so she'll.
Okay, so there's a link, that if you could just, in your free time, just look at that link, and then you'll get a better education of retirement and COLA and how things work.
Yeah. And I'll just say, Mary Ellen, my goal, I think ever since 2021, when we established these metrics,
Right.
was to work more hand in glove versus coming to the FinCom at the last minute to say, hey, can we have a COLA increase?
Right.
That was just insane, to my way of thinking. And it's hard to get what you want if you don't have sort of the justification for it. So
That's why we
now
brought you on.
Then the other question was, there's always an issue as far as town employees not benefiting from Social Security. And so now how does this new,
State employees too, all federal, all state. There were 7 states where there was, so for all, the best example is use me.
Right.
My career, starting with high school jobs through owning my own practice, the money I put into Social Security, based on the old system, there would be an offset. So I would get probably 1/8 of what I was due, or you would be due in your regular Social Security. But the offset also was incredibly unfair to the spouse. So that when I would, pass, because I'm in retirement, the person, like someone like Tara, who's been working forever, her benefit would take that almost same significant hit. It was passed under Ronald Reagan.
The windfall
And
provision.
that was something that, for years, and I'm a member of NCEPRS, which is the national retirement system. We've gone down, I've been to 5 legislative conferences in Washington DC as part of that. We go to this Hill, we know who's in favor. It was, I'm not going to say it was mostly Democrats, but ironically, you had really a great deal of interest in pushing forward of this by Republicans, including Senator Maine. I'm having a...
Collins.
Thank you. She was one of the leaders of this. So it had a bipartisan always. It just was to get it fully bipartisan, and it passed more overwhelming than probably most any bill in this last legislative Congress. So it was almost unanimous in
Can I
terms
ask a
of...
question about the funding schedule? Are you all analyzing whether or not, right now, we're supposed to be fully funded by 2031? We've had past conversations about whether or not to push that out a year? Is that what you're basically saying here in terms of backloading it, or?
Well, no,
not
backloading's just the funding schedule, every funding schedule in every community and every system, that last couple of years will be, last year. Will be a bigger hit.
Increase.
But then the next year, it will just be the normal cost of, it comes down dramatically. It's not that you don't stop paying, but it's paying for the actual expenses. That's the way to put it.
So we're required to increase it by 3% per year, according to PARAC. Some communities are at 5%, some are even higher. But the analysis that we gave was 3 to 5%, and see what effect it would have on the ADC, the actual determined contribution.
And it will be also interesting, when we do meet with the Finance Committee and with Eric, there was pretty much not a line in the sand, it was just an incredible amount of support within the Finance Committee not to extend it. That was one of the best things they said about our retirement system was we haven't taken, I hate to use in case they watch it from Marblehead has extended it as far as they can. So if we have a catastrophe economically, they have no ability. The one thing we have is some cushion. So if Armageddon came and hit us, we have the ability to smooth it out with many years available to push it out. Whereas Marblehead, and I'm not just saying Marblehead, there's many communities that have done that. I just think it's really dangerous and not with any kind of foresight to say we will have no ability to help smooth out something like
Right, but
that.
there's a big difference between 2031 and extending it all the way out, right? I mean, you could do 2032.
Oh, no, that's not out of the question, absolutely. But I'm saying that, one of the things I found, because we extended it once long before you, way back. The problem is you do, every year you do extend it out, I don't want it to ever become a habit, is what I've always found. That when we did it the last time, it was like almost a yearly request. Well, why don't you kick it out another year? Why don't you kick it out another year? And not that we have to listen, but you started to start hearing town meetings saying, why are we trying to fund this so soon? I mean, real illogical stuff, and I try to explain that to them. So, I mean, it would be, am I opposed to kicking it out one year? That will be a discussion within our board. I don't think that's, what we really want to see is what the actuarial says.
Yeah.
If they say, boy, this makes a lot of sense for you to go out a year, that's kind of usually the lead we take. And they seem to be actuarials that will say, you can kick it out a year, but here's the impact. And it's also another year that you're not going to be, you're just putting out that big balloon at the end, that last year, say. It just pushes it out a year. Because one of the things about, and I don't know Swampscott's plan, but there are some other things that keeping us funded at that date would benefit, some other things that we may owe. Yeah, what?
OPEB.
Yeah, OPEB. So the shorter we can get this done, the better we'll be off, be on addressing the OPEB.
Sure.
And I think
it's like it all plays into our infamous financial summit, because we don't really know the pressure that we're under here. We're still operating in the dark about that. And we're talking about sewer rates going up. We're talking about the school right now. One additional year there smooths things out. So, you could say, wait
Well,
till
we'll
there's
come
a
back
calamity,
once we
but-
go get those numbers and ideas from our actuary.
And I would say, Doug, in my mind, I always sort of think that our line item in the budget is around 8 or 9% of the total, give or take. And that I personally, not speaking for the board, but I would like to keep that number in range so that you can be more predictable about your finances. So if we come back and do this analysis, and it says that we have to increase the ADC such that it's now 10 or 11 or 12% of the budget, I think we'd be inclined to work with you all and say, let's extend the funding schedule so that we're not as big a percent of the total budget.
We try to stay consistent on that.
So the reason why it wasn't extended the last time, it was 2 years ago when the town administrator asked to have it extended, and the select board was inclined to have it extended, but the finance committee and the retirement board did not want to extend it. They felt that the return on the investment just wasn't worth it, and that as we move forward, like today, that there's a possibility we would have to extend it. So that was the thinking at the time.
It's always a discussion,
We could
and
be
I
there-
do
we
think
could be
that's
there now.
really the benefit for us to have the incredible conduit and the expertise of the finance committee, which is why we have a finance committee, because they always tend to shed a lot of light on this, that even kind of getting as a bridge to what we're looking to do.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's a lot of unknowns with what we're doing, right? We're dependent on market returns, right? And so if our returns are higher than our discount rate, things, would be less impactful. I think if they're lower than our discount rate, it could be hurtful. Right?
I do remember someone who used to work for you guys guaranteeing something we were asking for. We're going to have the best, this market's going to soar, and there's nothing that's going to happen. And he was like really adamant in a little bit of a discussion we were having. And then COVID broke out 2 months later, 3 months later. You just don't know, right? Yeah. We learned from COVID. If that's one thing this country's learned, we just don't know. Yeah. And I'm sure they learned it in the Depression, too. I mean, it's just things you don't imagine can happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we're comfortable with where our discount rate is now. It's close to the national average, and we're really comfortable with our new investment consultants. They're just
I don't know if you guys
top-notch
know that
consultants.
we switched.
That was a year ago, yeah.
A tad frustrated with and we've learned since. We had a good reason. He had no idea, their company had no idea that we were even thinking about this, but we were really getting a feel of disconnect and starting to be like, well, why is he advising this? And so we brought in what we consider some really expertise. I mean, they're all experts, I guess. Mary Ellen, you've seen, I think, a difference in the presentations and what we're talking about, and a little more clear, and changing us a little, right? Changing us, because we always want to be near the top in our performance. And our previous, it was time. And I was glad I think we got ahead of it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not just in time, but.
Well, it wasn't an easy decision.
No.
It took quite a while for the retirement board to make that decision. And
But we really dug in and found what we think's a really quality advisor. So you paying Friday on me? You have any other questions? I'm walking away without even asking, Chairperson, I'm sorry.
No, any other questions? Danielle, you sure you don't have a question?
I don't, no.
Okay.
So expect to see us in February, maybe?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Definitely. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Well, we love having you. Okay.
If I said enough, I might get first on the agenda.
Oh, okay, I can do that.
We'll last.
And last but not least.
Okay. And next on our agenda, we saved the best for last, is our police and fire chiefs to give us an update on your departments but specifically your hiring process.
Who would you like?
Hi, the chief.
Do the police chief, because your packets have his presentation first.
Okay,
Okay.
It's easier.
very good,
Okay.
thank you.
Sorry.
Good evening, Happy New Year to the Select Board and everybody in Swampscott land. So I know David had asked about our hiring, our latest round of hiring, which was actually late September 23.
So I put together a just the facts, ma'am, dragnet, down and dirty presentation. So our current state of affairs, just for information, we currently have 3 vacancies. That's the next slide. We currently have 3 vacancies and 2 positions that are in acting positions. Our most recent vacancy, Officer Juan Peña had just left last month for his own to work for the Winthrop Police Department, his hometown. That created that 3rd vacancy. I also, in that past slide, Diane, in that past slide, I put together potential retirements. Those are not exact dates for the retirements. We're looking at for Lieutenant Waters will have his 32 years of service this year, as well as Lieutenant Locke, his total 32 years of service. Lieutenant Hennessy will probably have about, I know he has additional time that he had from previous department, so he'll probably have close to 30, and Captain Cable will, in 2026, he'll have approximately 26 and a half years of service. So again, any one of our, they're all lieutenants, any one of our leadership can retire in 2025 or 2026. And currently, the Officer Cassidy, I know this was in the last select board, Officer Cassidy is currently on military leave, which is creating a little bit of a strain on our department in terms of staffing with these 3 vacancies. And Lieutenant Hennessy is going to have a medical procedure, so he'll be out for a while in the coming months. Next slide, Diane. So we've put together just a quick just synopsis of those who have left us, who have either retired, resigned in 2019. I failed to mention Officer Justin Nestor, who left in August 29, 2023. And since my hire, since 2022, we have hired 7 officers. Next slide. So David, talking about the timeline of 2023, back in September of 2023, we initiated the hiring process. At the time, we had approximately 137 candidates on the list. Thanks to the select board, back in October of that same year, 2023, you approved the bonus, which immensely helped our hiring process. The $2,500 for bonus for new officers and $10,000 bonus for lateral officers. I can tell you in the state that was unheard of, and I had only heard of a couple, maybe 2 or 3 other departments who had hiring bonuses. So I would say we were at the forefront of being leaders in that aspect. So back in, we started the process in September of 23. In September of 23, we tested, we conduct, after their written test, the candidates are vetted. Those were the 137 candidates. They are contacted to complete our physical fitness test. I failed to mention Officer Kevin Rain is here. He is part of our, he's an integral member of our hiring team, in charge of the physical test and other portions of the testing. So if you have any questions, please interrupt, or we can answer those questions afterwards. So we had probably about 40 individuals test in 2 different sessions for the physical fitness test. 28 passed, and 24 moved on for an oral board assessment. I'll explain the oral board assessment, but it essentially is a interview with 2 of our community members and 3 officers of different ranks. In December, just 2 months later, 2.5 months later, we had 9 finalist interviews with myself and the town administrator. 4 officers were selected, which was Officer Harrell, Officer McGee, Lateral Officer Nick Cruz, and Lateral Officer Joan Pena. And so they started, Pena and Cruz started immediately, and about a month later, the 4 officers, including Officer Noble, started the police academy. Next slide. So I've put together a flow chart of our testing process. I won't go over all the nuances of the testing process. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer those. Next slide. So one of the things in hiring is our outreach. What is the outreach? Who are we marketing to? Who are the people that we are contacting? And so just to give a broad understanding, our outreach includes posts not only internally on our Swampscott and MMA website, but also on LinkedIn, Handshake. We've attended various job fairs, colleges and universities, typically with the criminal justice programs, as well as with the vendor that we utilize, has a session with the MPTC academies for looking for any person in the academy, any candidate in the academy who is self-sponsored, meaning they haven't selected a police department, they're just trying to get the training to get on board with a police department. Also, MALI, Massachusetts Association of Women in Law Enforcement, the Latino Police Officer Association, which I'm the vice president of, our National Organization of Black Law Enforcement are contacted, and internally, the Police Exam Services, that's who we contract to conduct our written testing procedure and vetting the candidates. They have an internal website called Get Badged that has a member database of over 7,200 people. Right now, and just to give you a current, since we have vacancies, right now there are approximately 300 candidates on that list. Mind you, not every candidate wants to, some will say, I just want to get hired. I live on the South Shore. I don't mind coming to Swampscott. Others just have some preferred departments who they want to work for. But currently there's 300 entry-level candidates on waiting, 36% of which are ethnic minorities, 18% females, and 72% of them have a high school education or above. Next slide. Just some of the frequently asked questions. Minimum qualifications, 21 years of age, have a driver's license, ability to obtain a license to carry a firearm, no felony convictions, and at least a high school diploma. The testing company that we contract with, their written tests vet the candidates. And one of the most important things is that the testing is validated to monitor and ensure that there's no adverse impacts to the candidate's question, regardless of what background, ethnicity, where they're from. And I know that there was some issues these past couple of years with civil service and some civil service tests. The PT tests, our PT tests that we conduct mirror what the candidates will see if they're selected to go to the police academy. Like I said, the oral board assessment consists of 5 individuals, 3 from the police department, 2 from our community. And the background process is very comprehensive. There's a comprehensive criminal check, employment checks, neighbor checks. If they're already an officer, we contact their prior police department or former police department, and we check it's called the National Decertification Index. That's just as part of the police reform to ensure that there's not an officer who's actually been decertified and is trying to just hopscotch to another police department. Next slide. I included some of the hiring costs for hiring a new officer. As you can see, it's not cheap. It's it's costly for one candidate, approximately $8,300 per candidate. And the bottom chart is what we expect to pay them in their first year. I mean, when we send somebody to the police academy, we have to pay for the ammunition, their uniforms that they're going to wear, and that becomes costly. We've also included their mandatory training for the year for all officers, which is 64 hours of training a year, which comes down to $44.80 a year. In total, about $7,166 per year. And the last slide, I've kind of put together, all I know is non-civil service. I grew up in a police agency that did not have civil service. I can't tell you the benefits. I can tell you what I believe the cons are to civil service. For us, if we were still in civil service, there's no way we would have hired these 4 individuals like that in 2 months. Absolutely not. One of the problems with being in civil service is you are on the civil service timeline. And just in speaking to my fellow colleagues, other chiefs, just to have the candidates are waiting 2 to 3 months to even be notified just that they passed a written test. So I know Officer Rain can probably talk a little bit more on that. One of the other things that is a benefit of not being in civil service is our ability to outreach. So we can start, anybody can apply, anybody here in the state. So I know I can tell you with, specifically with Officer Harrell and Officer McGee, who were just selected, they had not even thought about Swampscott. And we were there at the testing process during the written exam, and it was actually Lieutenant Frailer who was there and chatted them up and said, hey, have you thought about coming to Swampscott? Now, Officer McGee is actually from Burlington, and Officer Harrell was from Franklin. So very different parts of the state, and they became interested just because of that personal connection that they were able to make with us. So that's a huge benefit for us being out of civil service. Again, some of the pitfalls right now with civil service, there's so many rules, there's so many things that are currently being addressed with civil service. Right now, there's the hybrid reformation of you can select 50% of your candidates externally, and 50% have to be from the civil service list. For now, right now, lots of questions are being asked. Well, how does civil service enforce that? And there's different stipulations where civil service will say, well, yes, you can hire externally, but you have to have tested with civil service in the past year. So there's weird nuances that have not been addressed yet through civil service. And again, I can tell you, my fellow colleague in Danvers, when you're in civil service, and maybe Kevin can correct me if I'm wrong, you can choose 2 or 3 departments, who you would like to go to, who you would like to work for. And if Swampscott is not, thank you, if Swampscott is not on the list, we're out of luck. So what happens is, okay, I am in civil service and I only have so many people on the list. Well, if I don't have it, I may not even have enough applicants. I might have 4 vacancies and only 3 people want to come to Swampscott. So that's one of the pitfalls of civil service. What we're also seeing, civil service, you do have the ability of keeping an officer. So the chief has to buy off on, hey, if I'm in a civil service department, say for instance Lynn, and I want to go to another civil service department, well, everybody's being affected by staffing. So you have, as a chief of police, you're not going to allow, you're not going to necessarily say, oh, sure, you can leave us, go on to greener pastures, because now you have nobody on the civil service list to take that spot. So what's happening now is officers who are in civil service are just resigning from that department. Fine, you don't want to let me go, I resign. And then they start the new process with the new civil service agency who will waive that. And so there's a lot of pitfalls. All I see are benefits to not being in civil service. Again, I'm biased, but because I know that our process has worked. And we're here to address any questions if you have any questions on hiring.
Are there any more slides, or are we on questions?
That's it. Just the facts.
Does anybody have any questions? David?
Chief,
Yes.
just about the 3 current vacancies that are in the department, what's the process, and what are your thoughts about getting those positions filled?
I would like to get started. We have already got started on vetting. We've had an open process. So if you look at our website, it is open, and we have received, maybe you can discuss this a little bit more, Kevin. I know of at least 2 or 3 applicants who have come in, lateral officers who are either in the academy or want to move over to our department who are interested. So we're in that process. We have to obtain approval from the town administrator to start the new process. Again, it's $3,500. We have used police exam services this will be the 3rd year in a row. We've had some great benefits using PES. So I would like to start the process, especially knowing that we have 3 current vacancies. We have a 4th who is on military leave, and a 5th who will be out for a number of months. Mm-hmm. So I think it's incumbent upon us to at least start the process.
And that would be a combination of new officers or laterals, or to be determined?
To be determined.
Either. It really could be. It depends on the candidates that are applying to our department. One of the things that we're focused on is what's predictable is preventable. So we're able to predict what's going to be happening. We'd like to prevent an onslaught of what we already went through. Since we've left civil service, we've had a variety of candidates continuously come to apply for our department. And now many of the people in this industry wanting to become police officers have the knowledge that we're no longer civil service. So their inquiries have been consistent. Knowing that we have the ability or would like to add officers to our force, we've continued a Rolodex to build a Rolodex as what's been coming in. Just to reiterate what the chief has been expressing here is to be able to take advantage of the systems that we've used in the past few years, to continue the momentum that we had developing the candidates that we brought in. We've only gotten better at what we've done and have done in the past. So moving forward, obtaining candidates to bring them in our lens is going to be efficient, effective, and smooth. So we get a variety of candidates. Some of them are trained. They could be ready to start the street just like our previous laterals have. Mm-hmm. Some of them may not, and those candidates get vetted through our process. Some candidates get turned away for whatever reason. We don't have the final say. We don't understand why, but we just present who we feel is eligible to be recognized, to be brought in. We've expressed it before. The academy takes a long time. It's 6 months. Then we have a 12-week FTO period once the candidate graduates from the academy, becomes an officer. So it's an extensive training period. The faster we can get through that, the more beneficial it's going to be for the town and for the impact on the numbers that you just saw.
Yep.
Yeah, and going back to your question, if I can predict who's going to stay, who's going to be a great police officer, I mean, I would probably own my own company. Sure. And hiring company. So, we've only had 1 officer since I've been here in 22 that's left. One of the new hires. So we have a very good success rate with our hiring process.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
So Chief, one of the issues from past select boards has always been how efficient the police department is at reaching out and making sure you're casting a wide net. And it's no secret that there's been a lot of praise that the fire department really does an amazing job on casting a wide net. So I hope that as you go forward, that there is a good amount of equity there as far as how you're bringing in new candidates and how you're recruiting and doing things like that. Another question I have is, if we're sitting here today and you have a number of vacancies, you had a number of vacancies back in May and June, and I'm guessing is the reason why you weren't filling at that time because you had multiple people already in the academy?
We had 2 vacancies. We only had this 3rd vacancy as of December. So we had the 2 vacancies. Part of that time was allowing those 3 officers, Harold, McGee, and Noble, to finish their field training program.
Okay.
So they had to finish that extensive field training program. Now having 3 officers in training is going to so to speak, tap out our current officers who are field training officers, because there has to be certified, trained field training officers. They don't just get to ride with, oh, well, tonight you're riding with so-and-so. There is a very comprehensive field training officer program that we utilize. It's called the San Jose model, and there are certain metrics that need to be met. So if we have more than 3 officers in field training, I barely have enough field training officers to train those 3 new officers in training.
Okay, great. And my last question is, on the bonus structure that was in place, the laterals received $10,000. Was that $10,000 after they completed 3 years?
Correct.
So is this...
It was, I believe it's after 1 year, $2,500, and then after year 3, it's $7,500.
Okay, and is this something you're going to be coming back to the board to ask for so that you could possibly get laterals or people that are coming right out of the academy? Is this something you're going to be coming to the board?
I think it would be beneficial to have a bonus structure. Now, I would leave that up to the board in terms of how much we believe that that is appropriate. But $10,000 was very, very significant here in the state. So that was almost unheard of. I think maybe we can go less. I'm not saying go cheaper, because that's not the route, but being fiscally judicious in what are we looking at? And again, that's back to David's question. Yes, laterals can hit the street. They can go through field training, 12 weeks of field training, and they're already out on the street. There are some cost savings to that, but there's a risk, just like our one officer who went to his hometown. He was here for a year. He was fabulous, but he went home. And that goes back to, if I had my crystal ball, are they going to stay here? Do they want to be part of, of our community? And so it's hard to judge. And I think it really just goes through the hiring process of, does this person have the heart to want to be a police officer? And do they have the heart to want to be a police officer and serve in Swampscott? That's the $1 million question.
So is there a provision now for that $10,000 incentive or is there a thought to giving or creating a provision that says, in lieu of, for this 10,000 or 5,000, whatever it might be, you will give us X years of service? 3 years, 5 years, whatever,
Not in that you will give us, but if you do not meet these requirements, you don't get, so the lateral officer who left to go back home, he didn't receive any, he forfeited the entire bonus.
Okay.
So you don't stay, you don't get it.
Right. But he would, after the first year, he would have got a portion of it, right?
Correct.
Right. So instead of that, right, where you give him a year, you give him the first year, you get X. So my thought is, if you stay for 3, you'll get, do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. And
that maybe just to kind of give them a little more time.
That is reminiscent of the civil service program. And, you can't, I think legally it would be impossible to hold someone to that.
Right.
If they just resign. Like, okay, you can say you can keep me here, but if I'm going to leave, I'm going to leave. If an officer wants to leave, they're going to leave.
Right.
So I think it's hard to actually have some teeth in that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Now thank you very much,
Thank you.
Chief.
Thank you.
Officer Green.
Good evening, Board. Thanks for inviting us here to discuss, to talk and go over our hiring policies. We really appreciate it. It's probably my favorite topic. It's about my favorite part of my job, is the hiring. You know, it's a life-changing job. It's a calling, and it's a tremendously rewarding job. And the process of selecting people and really getting to know them and offering, you know, this real great opportunity to some new person, usually a younger person, is absolutely the best part of what I do. So we left the civil service after the town put a lot of thought into it. We had a civil service study committee of citizens with myself and the then police chief as non-voting members of that board. And we kicked around a lot of, we looked at it from a lot of different angles. We looked at what worked well for us under civil service, and we looked at what we wanted to change. You know, and the main driving factor was, as what you said, Mary Ellen, was casting that wider net. You know, no matter how many different ways we looked at it, we couldn't get around the fact that under civil service, we were not going to be able to cast that wider net. After a few years now of doing our own thing, it's been a learning process. As Kevin Reen said, the more as we do it, we get better at it. We're learning to work out some of the bugs. But it's absolutely, I don't think anyone in my department would really seriously argue that it was better the way we had done it before. A lot of our experience has been the same, or very similar to the police department's experience. A lot of the frustrations with civil service are similar to the frustrations with them, and a lot of the successes we've had have been similar outside of civil service. There are different resources that police departments have. So their testing regime is different. Ours is more local, individual to us. We contract with a testing company. You know, we work with the school department to use space in the high school, and so a lot more falls on us. So a lot of it more is an in-house sort of a construct and how we're putting it together. But you know, we've had three entrance exams thus far, and you know, it's becoming more and more smooth each time we've done it. So in the time that we've left civil service, we have hired 10 firefighters outside of civil service, and we have 2 conditional offers and candidates that are going through background and vetting, screening and vetting right now. With the PARAC accepting the retirement of Lieutenant Vespucas, and the retirement of Deputy Chief Potts last year also. These 2 people will, with Vespucas gone, this is the first time in my tenure as chief that we will not have anyone on any type of a long-term sick or injury leave. So I'm really excited about that. And when these 2 new firefighters come on, we will be fully staffed. So right now we have those 2 vacancies and 2 people in queue to fill those. So that'll bring the number of hirings we've done outside of civil service to 12. 2 of those people did leave. But still, even with that, it'll be over a third of our department that we'll have hired in the post-civil service process. The process is just better. Under civil service, if we had a vacancy, we send a requisition to civil service, and they'll send us 2 names, and they say you can interview them if you want to, and pick one of them. We interview a lot more than 2 people for every person that we offer a job to now, and we get to do a real interview. I think there might be 4 or 5 people that work for the Swampscott Fire Department that I wasn't an officer and that I didn't interview before they got hired. There are maybe the top 5 people might have gotten there before I was interviewing them. So I watched the process under civil service. And frankly, you know, the candidate would come in and they would know where their position is on the civil service list, and we'd know it. And we would go through our questions, but it really almost was performative. They knew they were getting the job. We knew we didn't have any recourse but to give them the job, and that was it. And it's a lot different now. It resembles an interview process that anyone else that is more familiar to anyone who's interviewed for almost any type of an organization. You've got to put your best foot forward. We're going to really be looking under the hood. We're going to try to get to know the person, and if it doesn't work, if it's not going to be a good fit, it's not going to be a good fit. And when I say we, our policy has myself, our human resources director, and a member of the union form our interview committee. And in each of the rounds of hiring that we've done, I've allowed the union to have an additional member present, because I value their input as well. Right from the start, we've hired London Spain, Dennis Berry, Brittany Coppinger, Gino DiGiorgio, Ariana Saro, Santiago Garcia, Jonathan Thibault, Bethany Dudley, Kyrie Todd, and Joshua Mara. And we have offers out to Zoa Landry and Michael DiFiore. I could go on and on about every single one of them. It's been just great. And the process has worked. It has accomplished what the town set out to do. And what we kind of found out is like success just breeds success. So when it comes to that, the success that we've had in casting that wide net, I think part of what has made us successful is the same thing that was a hindrance under civil service. People didn't see themselves reflected in the workforce that we were asking them to apply to. And now the opposite can be said to be true. People do see and believe. We can have the little disclaimer at the bottom of our application all you want to, or an equal opportunity, blah, blah, blah. If they didn't see it, it's not real to them, and they didn't necessarily internalize that and believe it. Now people can see who rolls out on our trucks. They see who comes to their homes and gives them service, and they see who we are, and it's been made real to them. And people that we've interviewed have told us that. People have told us they took our test because they saw the people that work for our department, and they're encouraged to do it. We have open houses. When we're in the lead up to our entrance exam, we'll have an open house, and that's been really great. The people come in and they are shown around by our firefighters, and they get a real sense of who we are, and they get a comfort with us, and it starts to demystify our whole process, and they begin to have a comfort level before they even take the exam. So, as I said, it's still a learning process, and we're getting better and smoother at it, but the efficiency of doing it as we're doing it right now is just head and shoulders above the way it was under civil service, and I'm really happy that we've made the change.
Great. Any questions?
Yeah, Chief.
I guess we do.
Oh, you have anything, or I can go?
Do you have a question?
I have a comment. Chief, I just want to thank you for your leadership. Certainly Chief Casada for his leadership as well. But Chief Archer, you were here from during this process. I was on the board. The Civil Service Study Committee in 2020 was certainly something that town meeting established, and we really had to put all of our heads together and work in a collaborative manner, and it certainly wasn't perfect. It wasn't, but I certainly want to thank you and the members of the union and the Swampscott Fire Department and the Swampscott Police Department for continuing to move forward and continuing to work together on this. And it is a little smoother every time we move it. We move forward, and just I thank you, both chiefs, and Officer Reen, for coming together and explaining this and just giving us an update on the process. And I would certainly be remiss if I did not mention our former town administrator, Sean Fitzgerald, for his efforts in helping the town of Swampscott leave civil service. It was certainly it certainly was a Herculean effort, and I appreciate the update from you, Chief Archer and Chief Casada. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's not about the hiring process. I think I say this probably every time you folks come in, and it's just wonderful to see outside of the hiring process, the community work that you all have been doing. A special thanks to Officer Reen. I know that my son sees him all the time at school and is always very excited to chat with you about flag football and the comfort that kids get to have with law enforcement and fire and EMT, and then the sort of like anxiety and thing that gets stripped away because they know you. You're just a community member. They can approach you. They can talk to you. They can. It's so important. It's pivotal to, growing future firefighters and future police officers, but also just future community members who believe in what you're doing and support this town. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on our agenda is Town Administrator update, discussion and vote on interim Town Administrator Gino Cresta. Per our charter, when a town administrator chooses to go out on leave, the town administrator appoints a acting/interim town administrator, which was done. That was the case. So when Mr. Fitzgerald had taken a leave, he did, with the support of the select board, appoint Gino Cresta as the interim. Now that Mr. Fitzgerald has resigned, I'd like to have a motion from the board to appoint Mr. Cresta as our interim town administrator. I'd also like to point out that the reason why this is coming up tonight is because Mr. Fitzgerald's resignation was not in place until 12/19. Our last meeting was 12/18. So this is our first select board meeting, and that's why this is coming up today and not previously. So can I have a motion?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion? Can I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. The next,
Do you want to make a speech, Gino? Or?
I'll say thank you.
the,
Yeah.
That's right.
We say thank you.
Yeah.
We say
we
thank you.
really appreciate what you're doing, Gino.
I do think we should just mention that Gino has not fully taken off the DPW hat, that he is actually filling 2 positions currently. He does have a little bit more support with the new hire of the assistant engineer, but that he's facilitating two jobs right now, or 1.5, however you want to say it. So I just want to acknowledge that, and so if we could,
I agree with you on that. And also, I would also want to make sure we also recognize all the town staff and DPW, because everybody, even everybody across the board is jumping in and pitching in to help out to make everything smooth and make it work. So it's much appreciated. The next thing that we do have to start to talk about is the hiring process, and per the charter, we do need to discuss the entire process. And I did over the weekend, I was able to reach a number of people that were on the last hiring committee. I spoke with Naomi Dreeben, I spoke with Marzi Galaska, and I spoke with Erin DeRoche Peralt. Erin is actually she specializes in HR, and she was very helpful about talking about the process going forward and how we really should be looking at it. We are in a position as a select board to nominate somebody who will be our representative, or, which means it could be one of us, or we could select somebody else. We're not going to vote on it tonight. We'll vote on it next week, but it's something to discuss. I did have the thought that I think that having Erin DeRoche Peralt as our person might make sense because she had so much experience with it. She is HR, and I just want to throw it out there, and possibly maybe other people have some recommendations, or maybe you feel that, no, we have to have a member of the select board. So that's just a thought process I want to throw out there. And then we'll have even more information sent out in the next week as to how to go along, and really to put the timing together on how we want to do this. It does take a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Was Miss Peralt was the select board appointee?
No.
For this committee previously?
No, I think she was from the moderator, from Mike McClung, because the select board was Naomi Dreeben.
Mm-hmm.
So select board was Naomi Dreeben, Suzanne Wright was school committee, Marzi Galaska was the finance committee. There was a gentleman on the committee, I don't remember his name. I think that was it. So, okay.
Do we know who the school committee and finance committee members are? I believe the moderator alluded to the fact that he does know that. Do we know who those members are, or has that been?
No, we do not know at this time. So what happens is, for the charter, the finance committee and the school committee, and then we will put our name forward, and then he will add two after that. So he has the position of being able to add the two last ones, so that he can make the decision as to whether or not to balance it out, or
right,
whatever you want to call it there. We're in a process of doing this right. We don't have to, we don't have to drop everything and rush through it. We just have to do it right and put some thought into it. So we've had a lot going on. We've had the holidays, and we are where we are. This is our first meeting since the town administrator's resignation.
You know, is it historically, I don't know the answer to this, but is there an option to have some type of community involvement here, where we hear from actual residents who we're here to represent, and what their feelings or what their thoughts? I know our chart, we're we have to follow what our charter says, but at what point or to what extent do we engage members of this community with what? Maybe it's a simple survey of what they'd like to see in the next town administrator, or what they feel are important issues that the town administrator maybe excel at, or, hasn't delivered in the past, whatever it might be.
I think that's a really good point.
To what extent do we begin that conversation?
So perhaps we should add that onto, what we could do is we could add that onto one of our agendas, call for the public to come in and just give their opinion on what we should be looking for. Because then what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to give our opinion of what we're looking for.
Right, because I certainly, want to respect our charter and our process, but I do not want this to turn into a political battle of wills where we completely forget the 15,000 people that live here and what they've seen historically in the years that they've been here, what they might have appreciated or not appreciated, and what their feelings are on moving forward. And I think we lose sight of that a lot of times. And so, to the extent that we can explore that, I think we should.
Yeah, I agree with you.
We
could put that on.
I wonder if, not discouraging having it on an agenda, but I wonder if.
Want to have a separate meeting?
No, a survey has a little more anonymity to it.
Mhm,
So
right,
people
right.
might feel more comfortable giving more robust
Input,
opinion
mhm.
if it's not, they don't have to get up and say it in front of,
Right.
on a recorded
Absolutely.
open meeting.
Absolutely.
Not everybody signs up like we do to have
That's right.
their voices heard in that way.
Mhm.
So we might get more feedback and more honest feedback if we do a survey or something like that.
So do you want us to ask HR to put out a survey? Do you want the interim town administrator to put out a survey, or do we want to do both? Well, might as well do both.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think it makes sense for HR to begin, kind of thinking about it and vetting what type of questions they might put on a survey.
Mhm.
Of course, we could, certainly give our input as well. And, and I think it's just important for us to be open to, anything that residents have to say and want to say,
Mhm.
right?
What,
I think
was
it's a
there
great
any
idea.
community outreach for the last search?
Mm.
Does anybody recall?
Well, what happens is when the candidates are interviewing,
Mhm.
there's a public comment, and the public is involved.
Yeah, I guess.
Just like the
No, not like the school. Oh, the school, well, this is.
superintendent
Right.
process that just happened.
Yeah, I mean, less
This is a little
feedback.
different.
Yeah, that doesn't exactly
I
go that way
less
all the
feedback
time.
about the candidates and more about.
No, but I mean the fact that, I'm sorry, Katie, just to clarify, he was interviewed publicly.
Right, I think we're talking about something entirely separate from the interview process, right? I'm not talking about, once we get to the nut and bolts of interviewing candidates, I'm thinking more
Actually,
of
what role,
what people want to see in
characteristics
potential
you're looking
candidates.
about. Yeah, what characteristics you're looking for
Right.
in candidates and why that's important to you as a community.
Right,
So that before we even get to, here's 3 people, which one do you like the best?
Right.
We actually said, well, we heard you, and the reason we chose 3 people was,
yep,
because they portrayed X, Y, and Z characteristics, which you
you felt were important.
felt were important,
Yeah.
community members.
Okay, so, Gino, you want to take that back and start working on a survey right away?
We'll review it and
Yeah.
talk about it.
Or at least,
Yeah.
talk to human resources or whoever.
Those 2 weeks come pretty quick.
Oh, I know, I just mean, don't send it out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, don't send it out.
No,
And then for our nominee, you had the recommendation for Ms. Peralt. You have, is there anybody else? I mean, I'm gonna go think, as well, but, might we be able to get some information as to
Yeah, like a
as to who that
resume
is?
or-
So,
Yeah.
just so we can.
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I'd like to.
I just wanted, that was just my idea, is to use somebody, outside, and the board might have said, nope, we don't want to do that, and.
No, and I'd like to
'cause we're
hear of
gonna have the
other
ultimate
people
decision.
too.
Yeah.
Who else?
Right,
Of course.
exactly, David.
Right.
I think that's an important part, which is that we sort of get to play multiple roles in this process, and that's so if we could be able to share that,
Yeah,
I think that would be a benefit to the process.
And ideally, we'll know who the school committee and
right,
finance committee have nominated, so we don't nominate the same person.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Okay, so we have that. Now, we move to the approval of the consent agenda. Before we approve this.
did we skip one? Did we skip one? Did I miss that? Or were you not doing that? Ralph Cameron?
Oh, my God.
I didn't know if we.
I
don't think he showed up.
He didn't.
He didn't, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but we would like to acknowledge our new part-time electrical inspector, Ralph Cameron.
Yep.
Would you like to say something about Mr. Cameron?
I've known Ralph for many years, the old Lynn softball days, and I think he's a great guy, and he's going to be a great addition.
Does he live in Swampscott?
He lives in Lynn.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We have Marblehead with
I
DPW.
used to live right next, close to Dave and I, right next to the CVS in Easton Ave, but he's since moved to Powderland.
Great. So if he's part-time, so when is he around?
As needed?
Yeah. I think he has to be in the office 2 days a week. I'm just not sure what those 2 days are. Another plumbing inspector's in too. He's in too as well.
Okay.
Great. Okay, well, thank you,
Welcome, Ralph.
Ralph Cameron. And if we see you, we see you. Okay, so now going to the consent agenda. So did we say we were going to pull out the 4th, December 4th, or was it December 18th?
18.
Okay, hold on.
I don't,
We're not gonna,
I don't
you don't need to?
think we have to if we're gonna
You know what?
pull them out.
I just want to make sure we're really clear on the 18th. Just want to pull the 18th out because I'm going to read that separate. So is everyone else okay with the meeting minutes other than the I'm just leaving the 18th out to read the dates separate. Read the names of the restaurants separate.
So I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda except for the minutes of 12/18/24.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So on the 18th, I would just like to point out that, I just want to make sure we go on record. I would just want to reread the motion. Upon a motion duly made by Dave Grishman, second by Katie Phelan, it was unanimously voted to approve the common victors set forth in the presentation. Andreas Taqueria, 646 Humphrey Street, Gooseberry, 160 Humphrey Street, Cafe Avellino, 242 Humphrey Street, Captain Pizza, 3 Railroad Avenue, Asian Restaurant, 435 Paradise Road, Chipotle Mexican Grill, 450 Humphrey Street, Cindy's Superette, 653 Humphrey Street, Cookie Monster, 505 Paradise, Dockside, 286 Humphrey Street, Domino's Pizza, 430 Paradise Road, Dunkin' Donuts, 980 Paradise Road, Five Guys, 980 Paradise Road, Flip the Bird, 450 Paradise Road, G Bar and Restaurant, 256 Humphrey Street, Gourmet Garden, 430 Paradise Road, Hawthorne by the Sea, 153 Humphrey Street, Mike's, Jersey Mike's, Sub, 425 Paradise Road, Lincoln Landing, 156 Humphrey Street, Little G, 250 Humphrey Street, Mexicali Cantina Grill, 443 Paradise Road, Nordhaven, 408 Humphrey Street, Panera Bread, 433 Paradise Road, Paradiso Restaurante, 15 Railroad Avenue, Panoma Cafe, 128 Humphrey Street, Popo's Hot Dogs and Kells Cream, 168 Humphrey Street, Adobe Mexican Eats, 1016 Paradise Road, Renzo's Pizza, 197 Essex, Starbucks, 450 Paradise Road, Terrific by the Sea, 146 Humphrey Street, Tony Lena's Sandwich Shop, 88 Cherry Street, Tropicana Smoothie Cafe, 450 Paradise Road, Volvo Pizza, 152 Humphrey Street. Okay, we don't have to do, and I don't know, and Oyo Frozen Yogurt, 136 Humphrey Street. That was for the
Common Vic.
Where is the
Common
liquor?
Vics.
That's for Common Vics. And then for the liquor license, we have Cafe Avellino, 242 Humphrey Street, Kai Restaurant, 435 Paradise Road, Dockside, 286 Humphrey Street, Gourmet Garden, 430 Paradise Road, Hawthorne by the Sea, 153 Humphrey Street, Mexicali Cantina, 443 Paradise Road, Mission on the Bay, 141 Humphrey Street, Nordhaven, 408 Humphrey Street, Paradiso, 15 Railroad Ave, Terrific, 146 Humphrey Street, Panoma 3, 128 Humphrey Street, VFW Post, 1240, 10 New Ocean Street, St. John's, 430 Paradise Road, Swampscott Club, 362 Humphrey Street, Swampscott Yacht Club, 443 Paradise Road, Burl Street Liquor, 205 Burl Street, Vin Square Liquors, 375 Paradise Road, Ayers Express, 408 Humphrey Street, Richdale, 444 Humphrey Street. These are the liquor licenses that we had approved on the 18th. And I just wanted to read those out so that people heard what their addresses were.
Do you have to do entertainment licenses as well?
I'll do entertainment license as well. So entertainment license was Cafe Avellino, 242 Humphrey Street, Chai Asian Cuisine, 435 Paradise, Dockside Pub, 286 Humphrey Street, G Restaurant, Little G, 256 Humphrey Street, Gourmet Garden, 430 Paradise Road, Mexicali Cantina and Grill, 443 Paradise Road, Mission on the Bay, 141 Humphrey Street, Norrick Haven, 408 Humphrey Street, Paradiso Restaurant, 15 Railroad Avenue, St. John the Baptist Club, 40 Burpee Terrace, Swampscott Club, 362 Humphrey Street, Swampscott Yacht Club, 425 Humphrey Street, VFW Post 124, 8 Pine Street.
Should be 1240.
Should be,
VFW.
1240.
1240.
right, 1240, okay, sorry about that. Diane, can you just correct that?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. So can I have a motion to approve the 12:18 minutes?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carries. Okay, so we have the consent done, this done.
Motion to adjourn.
Select board time.
Oh, okay.
So now we go to select board time. Danielle?
Let's see, first meeting of the year. Thank you to Gino Cresta. You have been a beacon in this town for a number of years, in Town Hall. I applaud you for having the courage to take on this interim position. It's obviously not been an easy situation, but, I really do feel we are in good hands with you, and as well as with the very qualified department heads throughout Town Hall that we're lucky enough to have work for us. So, thank you. I know it's not easy doing the job of literally two people, but I do appreciate all the time and effort you're putting in. Yeah, that's really all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug?
A couple things. So what is the latest with our joint meeting with the school committee? Do we have a date?
Yes.
Thought a date floated around, but
January 23rd.
January 23rd. The school committee prefers to meet at their meeting here and not have a separate meeting.
okay.
Okay.
So that will be January 23rd here.
At 6 o'clock.
Is that the financial summit?
So that's 2 weeks from tomorrow?
That is the financial conversation.
Okay.
I am not available for that meeting.
Hmm?
I'm not available on the 23rd. So, just FYI.
Can you send out an invite, Diane?
We have to post the agenda
Okay.
anyway, so you have the agenda.
For the 23rd?
Yeah, I left you 3 agendas, so you get a chance.
Okay.
When do we anticipate having materials to review for that meeting? Just, I mean,
I'd have to I'll find out from Cheryl.
and Amy.
Yeah, Cheryl, there's been a delay. There's been a delay because a staff member lost their father, so. But I'll let you know about that tomorrow.
Okay. And then Climate Action Committee and Renewable Energy Committee have come together and want to come before us and propose combining the committees.
Great.
Do they need to come before us to do that, or can their liaison just make that recommendation?
I suppose that is possible too, yes. But
Do they want to come see us?
I'm just concerned about timing, budgets, and things like that.
Sure.
So,
Yep. Happy to
well, let's
bring that back.
see what we can do. I'll pull the agendas with Diane.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be elaborate, but
Can you also address the how we're going forward on like the CZM grants and things like that, the timing and what we're going to be doing to try to get those grants, or whatever it's going to take to get those grants the next time?
I can briefly state it now,
Okay.
which is, we didn't get those grants, therefore we did the $200,000 through ARPA, which is basically the content that those grants were, the first half of what those grants were targeted toward. And, we basically need to play that through. That got bid out, and process is going to start. So I don't think we're going to be in a position really to think what big thing that we learned is that we weren't far enough along in our knowledge of what exactly we needed to do. So we need to actually go through our process for this year with the $200,000 to get to a point where probably the following year we'll be in a position to say, this is the type of project that we can really successfully bid on for those two types of grants.
Okay. David?
Yep. Yeah, just, Mary Ellen, you're the chair, and we rely on you to set the agenda and the discussions, you know, at our meetings, and, you know, we really need, you know, things on our agenda, and by not putting things on agendas, we fail to communicate to the town. You know, it's a problem. You know, the fact that we had a meeting on the 18th of December, December 30th, and tonight, and we're not talking about a citizen's petition that was signed by over 200 residents, you know, is not doing a service to those individuals. You know, as a board, you know, we've all sat and said we want to listen to our residents, we want to listen to neighbors, you know, and the fact that we have 200 plus certified signatures on a petition should matter. You know, Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 10, the Select Board shall call a special town meeting upon a request of 200 registered voters, and such meeting shall be held not 45 days after the receipt of such request. I think we're in you know, so now, you know, we have a select board that arguably has gone against the wishes of town meeting in 2023 for the Pine Street project. We've gone against the actual RFP. We've gone against the veterans and the VFW leadership's requests, and now we're going against Mass General Law. So I really want to course correct. I look forward to the conversation that we're going to have at our next meeting, and I look forward to scheduling that special town meeting.
Katie?
Do you want to talk about the meeting in agenda today, or do you want to wait till next week?
Next week. You can.
Okay, well, okay. I'm fine. Thank you.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have had several town meeting members come to me and ask me about some of the comments that were made by the moderator as far as not being given adequate information about processing a special town meeting. Over the last 8 years, we've had a special town meeting on the first or second Monday of December. Our town administrator was aware we were going to be having a special town meeting. I was never informed that the moderator was not informed. However, I did reach out to the moderator on, I'd like to make sure this is really clear, on October 30th. So there was notice for special town meeting, and in my opinion, I thought special town meeting went very smoothly. We were in and out, and we took care of business. On a second note, I would like to address, on the petition, we will be addressing that at the next meeting. We are not in violation of Mass General Law whatsoever, but that will be a good discussion at our next meeting. And finally, I would like to close by, at our last meeting, Mr. Grishman, you made a comment that I had pressured B'nai B'rith on where to go with the development. And that was very disturbing to me, because it's not the first time where you have made comments towards somebody's character. You did that towards the chair of another committee where you called that chair corrupt. And these comments, these words do harm. And I really wish you would think before you speak, because I want you to know that on the morning of the 19th, I did call the CEO of B'nai, and I did ask her if she was aware of any comments made, and she wrote to me immediately and said, I hope this is well. At your request, I am writing to confirm that at no time in the course of the call on 12/3 with Marzi, David Grishman, or Doug Thompson did Holly Grace or Yara Yerktart of our staff say that the chair of the select board was applying extreme pressure related to the development. It has been communicated to me that during this call, the group discussed reports of neighborhood opposition to a 4-story building and agreed to study an additional 3-story scheme with an attached new 3,000 square foot VFW, which was subsequently determined to not be viable based on insufficient on-site parking and cost. It is of course, our hope that we can build unanimous support by the board in the future. We are committed to working with you and the other members, as well as other town officials, neighbors, and stakeholders to continue to build this support. As you know, we are only at the beginning of this process, and it will take all of us working together to ensure that we are successful in creating the equity of housing that local veterans and Swampscott citizens deserve. Thank you for allowing us to get started on this important effort. Susan Gilman.
I'll just note Susan was not on the call.
Correct.
And that is my resident comment, my select board comment. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.